yours?
Sure.
All right, perfect. So, hi everyone. If you witnessed all of that, thank you for your patience while we got situated. My name is Savannah, and I'm a library associate here at the Woodridge Public Library. So, thank you for joining us for this virtual presentation from NAMI DuPage. NAMI stands for National Alliance on Mental Illness and has chapters across the country. They provide mental health services and psychoeducational programming for communities, as you kind of heard a little bit about, and you'll see tonight. We're very fortunate to have Jessica here from NAMI DuPage. I think that your professional title is the Director of Community Education at NAMI DuPage.
Yep, correct.
We'll be discussing mental health, education on anxiety and depression, stress, and an overview of the services provided by NAMI. And we do have permission to record the presentation, so it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel in the coming days. If there are any questions, we can maybe save those to the end as time allows. And without further ado, I'll pass things on to Jessica.
Great. Thank you, Savannah. So yeah, as she said, my name is Jessica Schneider, Director of Community Education. And then here's just a little quick overview of we are a nonprofit, completely only funded by grant money and donations, not funded by the government. And we share space. So this building, we don't have this whole building. We just rent space from the DuPage County Health Department. This is their community center in Wheaton. So we just have one little section of that at the end there. And we are a peer-led service. So what that means is we're not clinicians, we're not doctors or psychiatrists or psychologists, but we are staffed and trained peers who have what we call a lived experience. So either themselves living with a mental illness, or if they have a loved one that has a mental illness. And so most of the programs are facilitated by what we call our peers. They're peers. We also have, we do have a good sized staff now. We have 18 staff and about 140 regular volunteers. And almost all of our services are free or very low cost. The only services where there is a cost associated are our one-on-one peer counseling sessions, again, which are led by peers. I'll get into a little bit more of that later. And we are one of the largest NAMI affiliates in Illinois, and there's over 600 nationwide. So a little bit of background there. And here's our mission statement: provide support, advocacy, and education in order to improve the quality of life of individuals with a mental illness and their families. And this is just kind of the definition, if you will, mental illness: a diagnosable illness that profoundly disrupts a person's thinking, feeling, moods, and the ability to relate to others, while also disrupting the person's ability to carry out daily activities. So one thing I like to point out on this slide is, it's biological. It's not a choice to have a mental illness. It's a biological thing. And you just overcome it or, say, oh, you'll feel better in a few days. It's a diagnosed illness. So, and it can affect anybody of any age, any race, it doesn't discriminate. Why is training on mental illness important? Well, mainly what we do at NAMI is trying to kind of break down the stigma and the misinformation that's out there, and let people realize it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to ask for help. Letting people understand how common it is. And sometimes people don't know how to reach out for help, or they just aren't comfortable. They don't know where to go and who to turn to. So that's why, we're here to help with that. And what is impacting our mental health? Well, obviously not in today, in what's going on in the world, there's a lot of stressful life events that can come up. Right now, the economic fluctuations can be a stressor for people, grief or loss. And then this statistic here, nearly 2 in 5, so that's 39% of workers report that their work environment has had a negative impact on their mental health. So that's a pretty high number. So that's one thing. I was saying, I do a presentation where I get a little more into specifics about workplace mental health, but I have threw a few of those statistics in here as well. And then this is just just so you can see you're not alone, that some of the numbers here for, major depressive episodes, 8.3%, Anxiety disorder, 19.1%. And you don't have to read all of them, but as you can see, they're more common than people realize. And anxiety and depression are the two most common mental illness diagnoses. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later and a little more specifics. And then just 1 in 5 adults live with a mental health concern. So that's quite a bit. I think people are surprised sometimes when they see that number. And this is just red flags of things to look for. If it's the duration, if it's like 2 weeks or more and you're still, you or somebody, notice somebody, a loved one's not doing well, the intensity of emotions, no reason for the emotions, unhealthy coping mechanisms. These are just some red flags to look for. And then this is what we call the ripple effect. This is one of our we have a similar graphic on the NAMI national NAMI website. But so this is kind of just pointing out that it doesn't just affect the individual, it kind of it starts there, but then it can trickles down and can affect the family, the community, and the world. And there's just a few, I won't read all of these statistics, but just, some of these, like 20% of people experiencing homelessness also have a serious mental illness. That's a big number. And then it says caregivers spend an average of 32 hours per week providing unpaid care. And we were actually just recently discussing with my colleagues at NAMI about, we've had several different inquiries about a specific support group for caregivers, not necessarily, with supporting someone with a mental illness, but just even supporting somebody with physical needs or other disabilities, and then how that can affect your mental illness, your mental health. So that's something we're looking at for the future. And why don't they reach out? Well, and this is another staggering number. The average delay between the onset of a mental illness and then symptoms and treatment is 11 years. So a lot of times my colleague who's the director of the youth department said a lot of times kids, like youth, they don't even really realize or get diagnosed until they're in college or even later, because it's just a long time before sometimes it's just, you don't realize what's going on. So you don't know you have a mental illness, you don't know that it's treatable and that recovery is possible. Again, stigma, fear of trying and failing. And here's some protective factors, healthy practices, good problem solving skills, having a good social support system, friends and family, having some positive home and family routines, avoiding alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. And then this is about stigma, and I'll go the next slide. I have a short video, but so this is kind of, most people I think have heard the word or a little familiar, but it's just kind of that negative perception. So it's kind of this cycle of, you start with the negative perception, and then your fear of discrimination, then you avoid getting help, and then that's when things can escalate and become untreated and cause problems. Yeah, and here's just a short video. This plays, yeah, I think. There we go. Oh, gotta go to the next. Sorry, one second. Let me try to get, there we go. Sorry, let me go back to the my slideshow view. Oh, shoot. My bad. So every time I play video, something like this happens. But anyway, that was I really like that video. Very powerful. I think I can't take credit for finding that one. My colleague, our director of youth services found that, and I thought it was a really awesome video. Again, just kind of tagging along to that, the stigma, stigma is real, and that's a big part, big thing we're still dealing with people not wanting to seek help or just feeling like they're going to be labeled. So again, here's another kind of workplace related stat, but 74% of employees say it's appropriate to talk about mental health at work. Which is, I guess that's not a terrible number, but then only 58% reported that they would actually feel comfortable sharing. So that's kind of, there's a little bit of a disconnect there. So we're, trying to work on that. And then this is, a little bit of what we saw in the video, just different, thinking of words we use on an everyday basis. I still even struggle with this, and I didn't really wasn't as much aware of it until I started working at NAMI. But, saying like, when you say, oh, that's crazy, or that's insane, we hear it all the time. You see it on TV and movies. It's just kind of a common phrase, but that could be hurtful to somebody who, is dealing with a mental illness. It's kind of, it's not really the nicest word to use. And then, instead of saying like my OCD brother, you say my brother is living with OCD, or he or she is an addict, she or he is a person recovering from addiction. So there's just thinking about kind of the language that we use. And then recovery and treatment. Mental illness is not curable, but it's treatable. And then this is just a little bit, talking about recovery, and that's what we do at NAMI. Our trained peers work with individuals and kind of work on a step-by-step plan and helping them, live well in, with dealing with their mental illness. We help them come up with a treatment plan. And just giving them that hope that there is a way to live, you don't have to be completely closed off from the world if you have a mental illness. And I like this graphic of it's showing that, recovery, it's not linear, it's not a straight line. It's going to look like the one on the right with the squiggly line. And it's different for everybody. Everybody has their own journey. And then now I'll get into I mentioned the beginning of the two, anxiety disorder, and then I'll talk about depression. So there's everyday anxiety, and then there's anxiety disorder. So anxiety disorders are the most common mental health concern. So I think it's common, everybody might every now and then say, oh, I'm feeling anxious, or you're having a rough day. That's different than anxiety disorder. So the most common anxiety disorders are generalized anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And then here's some signs, kind of like I just mentioned, it's normal to be worried and stressed during, certain times. This is more, again, it's like the extreme cases of anxiety where you experience a panic attack, or it says panic attacks are often mistaken for heart attacks at first, but usually go away when people are able to talk to someone and, they do some breathing techniques or things like that. But these are just some things to look out for. And again, I think it's natural or normal for everybody to have a bad day here and there, but this is where if it's like for an extended period of time, or if it's starting to interfere with your everyday lifestyle. And then this is just some anxiety myths and facts. So some of the myths that, anxiety is not a real illness, which in fact it is a legitimate diagnosable condition. And some people think it'll just go away on its own. And symptoms of anxiety are persistent, and they do require treatment. And some people think that it's not very common, but as I just mentioned, it's one of the most common diagnoses in the United States. It's the most common mental disorder. And social anxiety and being shy are not the same. So some people get the kind of mixed, the lines are blurred a little bit with those. But again, just being nervous about going to an event, or, doing a presentation or something, that's okay. But when it gets to be, where it's so overwhelming, you can't do your everyday things. And then depression, also a serious mental health condition that negatively affects how you feel, think, act, and perceive the world. 16 million American adults, so that's almost 7% of the population, had at least one major depressive episode within this past year. And here's another, oh, there it is. Okay, this is a NAMI, from the NAMI national website on depression.
It's important to have conversations about mental health, because depression doesn't always look like the person sulking on the street. Depression can look like this. We hear the word depression a lot, but what is depression? Depression can show up in many different ways. It can show up as anger. It can show up as a smile. It can also show up as irritability. It can show up as sadness. It can show up as a high achiever. It can show up in many different ways. Some people experience situational depression, and others experience clinical depression. Situational depression can be brought on by a personal event or world events, and clinical depression is characterized by intense feelings of sadness lasting for more than 14 days. And it's more than just a rough patch. Key symptoms in depression include major changes in sleep and/or appetite, loss of interest in activities, not wanting to get out of bed, not wanting to shower, lack of energy, and suicidal thoughts. And there are different types of depression, including seasonal depression, postpartum depression, and major depression. Pay attention to the severity of your symptoms and also how long your symptoms last, because having a down day is different than having a down month. It's time to be concerned when these symptoms get in the way of everyday functioning. One of the myths that I want to dispel: just because someone's smiling on the outside doesn't mean they're not hurting on the inside. It's a big misconception that you can't feel moments of joy and laughter while being depressed, but that's not true. which is why it's important to still seek help and support for your mental health. Depression is common and treatable through things like one-on-one therapy or group therapy or support groups and medication. And what works for one person may not necessarily work for you, and that's okay. We all have our mental health journeys, and it can take time. A major tip when it comes to depression is check in on your strong friends. Check in on your friends who are always laughing. Check in on your friends who are always smiling, because those can easily be ways to mask how they're truly feeling on the inside. When I've experienced depression, one of my favorite ways to self-soothe is through the self-compassion hug. The self-compassion hug makes me feel really nurtured, safe, and not alone. To learn more, visit NAMI.org/depression. And remember, you are not alone.
Why it never lets me go to the next slide when I do this. Ah, sorry. No. There we go. Okay, so that, yeah, that was, I just like that kind of a cute video there. I just a little silly when she does the hug at the end, but that might help somebody. And then here's some, just some signs of depression. Some of them similar to anxiety, but this is a little bit, tiredness, but more than, again, kind of more than just the everyday, you didn't get a good night's sleep or something, or, sadness, guilt, lack of concentration, changes in appetite, things like this. Again, things to look out for. And one thing from that video, what always resonates with me is when she says to, check in on your friends or loved ones who are always happy and always seem like, everything's fine. Cause sometimes they're the ones that really need help and are hiding it. So I just really like that. And then we'll talk a little bit about stress, which we all have some stress in our lives. And then, this is just the definition: state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. And just, some typical causes of stress: major life changes, work, school problems, relationship difficulties, financial troubles, unrealistic expectations. So, we all feel a little bit of stress at times, for sure. And then, sorry, one more little short video here. This is called the stress bucket.
Stress is something that we all experience sometimes. When problems and pressures get too much, we can start to feel overwhelmed and struggle to cope. Everyday pressures like work, money, and family worries can place huge demands on us, as can big life events like losing your job, family breakdown, or the death of someone close. The stress bucket is a helpful way of thinking about your problems and finding different ways of looking at what's causing your stress. Imagine that you carry a bucket with you. As the day goes by, different problems and demands fill up your bucket. When your bucket overflows, the stress can make you angry, anxious, or sad. The good news is there are things that you can do to manage these problems and stop your bucket overflowing. Try and exercise a bit more, eat well, and get more sleep. Get support by talking to someone you trust and telling them how you feel. Make a list to help break problems down and think about your priorities. What smaller tasks should you tackle first? Try the relaxation ideas on the Mindwell website. Take a short break, practice breathing techniques, and find the things that work for you. Making these small changes can feel good, like turning on a tap to release some of the pressure you're feeling. Explore the Mindwell website for more helpful tools and ideas for coping with stress and keeping your buckets from overflowing.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so I just like that video because it has the visual of the bucket and kind of filling up, and then we get overwhelmed. So it just, this is another visual here for kind of looking in that middle, the optimal stress zone is kind of where we want to be. And, a little bit of stress can actually be good and help you be more productive and get things done. But, you know, you don't want to get into this pink zone there where you're overwhelmed or getting burned out or feel like you're going to have a breakdown. And then, you know, something I like to note as well, it's not, you know, stress is not just mental, it's also, there's physical signs of stress, such as headaches, aches and pains, insomnia. You could have, you know, upset stomach, chest pains, lack of energy. So some of the stress relief things, you know, get moving. Obviously, some people think, you know, exercise can definitely be something that helps. Running or walking, yoga, doing a fitness challenge, finding some new hobbies, you know, reading a new book, learning a new language, any of these, you know, kind of getting your artistic side out, or listening to music, or learning how to play an instrument maybe. And then some virtual ideas, even, you know, sometimes online gaming can sometimes be stressful but you know, if you're doing it in moderation, and there's still a lot of virtual tours and things, online things that you can do. And this is just, I like this little graphic here about the mindful, they call it the mindful stop. So just kind of, even if you're having a, you know, a long work day, or you're feeling overwhelmed, just kind of stop for a minute and kind of just do a little reset, take 3 deep mindful breaths, observe some things around you, and just kind of, you know, just kind of take that break during the day. Even sometimes even just stepping away from your desk or going, you know, outside for a few minutes helps. And then I'd always I threw this part in about social media, just because that's such a hot topic now, with, you know, how obviously it can be a fun thing to do, but there are also some negative impacts, especially for your mental health, you know, cyberbullying. And this is not just for youth, as you know, adults can do this as well. And then just, you know, you're comparing your life with other people, or the FOMO, fear of missing out. It can create sleep problems. It can become addicting. A lot of people, you know, you hardly ever see anybody now without a phone in their hand. Even when they're out walking their dog, or, you know, crossing the street, people are on their phone. So just like to kind of point that out, to be a little more aware of that. And then, you know, there are ways to use it positively, just setting some boundaries, taking breaks, just being mindful of, you know, things that might be triggering, or if you're just, you know, spending too much time. And then also, I feel like this last one, connecting with friends and family in real life, is, you know, I think a lot of times people hide behind the digital and social media now, and don't even want to have those in-person connections. So I think it's important though to still maintain those. And then here's just, as we kind of get towards the end here, just a little bit about NAMI, a little more, I mentioned a little bit in the beginning, but this is more specific to, these are the list of support groups that we offer. There are a couple that are on hold right now, just because of transition with who the facilitator was. But if you go to our website, which there'll be information in a minute about that. All our website is always up to date with our current, like, day-to-day times and what support groups we offer. But so we pretty much have something here for everybody, individuals and families. And the one thing I like to point out here, NAMI DuPage is unique in that we offer support not just for individuals, but for families. So on Wednesday nights, we have our connections group, which is for individuals dealing with a mental illness. But then right down the hall is the group for the family member. So if you have a loved one who's struggling, but then you also want support, we have that on the same evening. And then we have our peer services. So I mentioned our peer support, which is for family and individuals that are trained as recovery support specialists. So they go through our training, and then they offer mentorship and guidance. But we also have interns that come. Now we have a huge group of interns doing going through a program. Some of them go through an actual there's a program now through COD and some of the other local colleges to become a certified recovery support specialist. So then they come to us to get their hours for their internship. And then we have something called the living room, again, it's in that building, and that first picture I showed, the first slide. It's open Monday through Friday, 3 to 8 p.m. And that's where we'll have one of our trained support specialists there. There's always somebody there. So we kind of call it an alternative to an emergency room. So if somebody's kind of feeling like they're in crisis and they need, or, having a mental health crisis and they need to talk to somebody, a lot of times they just don't know where else to go but the emergency room. This is an alternative to that in case it's just something that, where they can sit and talk with somebody and kind of help them de-escalate. But if it does become more of a concern, we are in the building with the DuPage County Health Department Crisis Services. So they're just literally right down the hall. So we can walk down there or call them, and then they can come in and help if it's something that needs to be addressed. And then community education. So things like this, doing presentations in the community. We offer, again, I can kind of customize presentations or do like a workshop. We have some of our NAMI signature education classes that we offer: NAMI Basics, Family to Family, Family and Friends, or just a few. And then another thing that's kind of unique, we have what we call our Speakers Bureau. So we have individuals who share their story. And right now I have a group that they go to the different hospitals within DuPage County. They go to the inpatient and outpatient behavioral therapy groups, and they share their story so they can offer people, a story of hope and recovery, and they can see, oh, someone else is going through a similar situation as me. And and then that gives them information about NAMI as well and what to do for follow-up after they're released from the hospital. And we also have social and recreation programs, which not a lot of people know about. Again, all of this is on the website with the specific dates and times, but every week we have a yoga class. I think that's still on Mondays in the morning. There's a creative card making class, Craftastic, which is kind of varies week to week on what they do, different craft projects. They do bingo. We have a jewelry making class. And then just a little bit, we're always looking for volunteers. You do have to go through a training to be a support group facilitator, but we're always looking for, you go through the NAMI Illinois, they have like a state training program, but it's not very extensive. And then just sometimes general office work, or we have a reception desk that's run by volunteers. And then we also have a print shop, which not a lot of people know about. So within our office, we share basically our break room is also a print shop, and it's completely run by volunteers. Well, there's one gentleman that manages it, and then all the work though is done by all of our regular volunteers. And then we partner with Lemon Press is the marketing. He goes out and gets the jobs for us, but then we get a big portion of the proceeds as a donation to NAMI. And then within the building there, we have the Rise and Shine Cafe, which is open I think it's like 10 to 1. And it's just kind of a grab and go snack shop. But again, it's run by volunteers. And a lot of them are going through this peer workforce development program that we have. So it gives them an opportunity to prepare them for getting out there and getting employment, and, how to, not just how to get a job, but how to maintain the job. So Eric is a director of that, and he just recently kind of revamped that program a little bit. So he has kind of a 3-step process of from the beginning, and then getting the job, maintaining the job, and then, keeping up with them a few months after to make sure they're doing okay. And then of course we have youth services. I'm not going to go through all of this, but we have a ton of awesome programs and workshops for youth. They go into the schools and do presentations. And then there is a teen support group. It's an in-person group every Thursday at 7 p.m. And that group also, because they're youth, there's a licensed clinical social worker there at every group, as well as one of our trained facilitators. So that's it. Sorry, I hope I didn't go too much over time. I'm at the end here if anybody has any questions, and then that's just my information. If anybody needed that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. That was a lot of good information. I like the combination of like the tips for people to take away and then also the services as well. I think
Great.
your focus on like the person first language that you mentioned really resonated with me. That's really important. Um, in the chat, there was one question. So someone had noted that eating disorders are sometimes or oftentimes a dual diagnosis with anxiety. So they were wondering what specific resources are available to individuals who are experiencing eating disorders.
Yeah, well, so we don't currently have a specific support group for that, but we do have a dual diagnosis support group, which is now in this group, there are two different facilitators that and in their case, what this group is more focused on with dual diagnosis is a substance abuse disorder along with a mental illness. So not exactly the same, but there's also just our connections group would probably be helpful for that. Or again, reaching out and possibly we try to pair people up with, the peer, like I mentioned, the peer one-on-one sessions, if that's something that somebody wanted to do. And we may not always have somebody trained with that specific diagnosis, but we do our best to try to, find the right fit for that.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. That's really good to know for our patrons if anyone is interested. And then again, this will be presented and posted on our YouTube channel, hopefully within like the next week or so, hopefully by the end of the week. So if anyone wants to go back through, I know it was a lot of really good information, but it'll be there as well. So if there weren't any other questions, let's see, it looks like one might have just come in. They would like to know if your work group is affiliated with WorkNet DuPage.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I can see the chat
Okay.
now.
Cool.
Yeah, no, that is a different organization, but I do think that Eric Metcalf is our director of that peer workforce development area. And I know that he partners with them. I want to say, even just to get some tips and help each other, but we are not affiliated with them. No, we're not necessarily, and we're not a staffing agency. I want to make sure sometimes people get confused when they see the peer workforce thing. It's more of just kind of training and mentorship to get people to a place where, we do even help them with resumes, or Eric and his team will, he has classes that they come to, but I am familiar with WorkNet DuPage, but that is different. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, it is also good to know that there are some nice community relationships there.
Yeah, most of the other nonprofits, within DuPage County, we have some sort of connection with, or try to do, like I actually did this similar presentation for Metropolitan Family Services, which is right in Wheaton near our offices. So, and we do a lot of I call them community booths or resource booths. So we go out into the community at a lot of, you'll probably see, if it's not me, it's one of our interns probably, at a lot of the, health and wellness fairs, or even some of the community events this summer, some of the, like the Downers Grove Fest we were just at, and things like that. So feel free to stop by and say hi.
Awesome. Sounds like a lot of good community engagement.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, if there weren't any other questions, I just wanted to thank you again, Jessica. Someone wants to know what the website is for NAMI.
Gosh, I just realized I didn't put that on here. So it's just it's namidupage.org. So basically this last part here of my so if you just do namidupage.org, that'll take you right to our website.
Perfect. And there's a lot of other good resources on there too. I've taken a look several times.
Yep.
It's very
Yes,
important.
definitely. And like I said, we kind of pride ourselves in keeping that up to date with, if there is a class that has to get, canceled or is on hold, it will say that. And then again, there's a ton of drop downs for different individual services, family services. So yeah, please check out all of those resources.
Absolutely. And then it looks like if you still have a couple minutes, there's another question coming in.
Sure.
Is wondering how long they should wait before signing up for volunteer training if they're new to being diagnosed.
That's a good question. That's kind of a more, I guess, personal to however you're feeling. But we do, we can kind of connect you with one of our we have our newer, her name is Michelle. Michelle is one of our newer managers on the the individual services side. And she's awesome, and she's really great at, you know, she can even if it's just a phone call, chat with you on the phone, or if you want to send her an email, and or even if you just want to, since my information's on the screen here, if you want to send me an email, I can connect you with her. And she's there, you know, she and her team are good at kind of determining like where you're at and what might be a good fit. A lot of times our volunteers will start out at our front reception desk, which is just a good way to really, you kind of get to know about what we do and learn about our resources. You kind of answer phone calls, or if people come up and have questions. And then there's always someone with you for training. You know, it wouldn't just throw you in there alone. You'd have someone with you who's done it and can train you.
All right, so it sounds like there are a lot of opportunities for everyone, regardless of where
Yep.
you're at. Thanks. I don't see any other questions here, but I really appreciate everyone's engagement and wanting to learn more about the services. I know NAMI has a lot going on, which is really cool. If there are any other events or anything you wanted to promote, Jessica, feel free to.
Yeah, no, the only one, and I'm going blank on the exact date, but we have, again, it'll be on the website. We have our run, it's called the Run for the Mind, coming up in September. We used to do it in the summer. So we moved that to the fall. So that's our next kind of on one of our fundraisers. Oh, and then before that, we actually, at the last week of July, at the fairgrounds, DuPage County Fairgrounds, we have the Cookies for a Cause, we call it. So if, I don't know if anybody's who's on the, you know, watching now has went to the DuPage County Fair last summer. We were inside one of the air conditioned buildings, which is nice. And then we actually baked the cookies. They're not homemade, they're frozen, but we bake them fresh there. And then we sell cookies to, you know, which is another just fundraiser for us. And then we have a, you know, resource table and share information with the community as well.
Okay, perfect. That's also good to know if people want to attend any in-person events. Those are some nice opportunities to do that. But
Yep.
yeah, I don't think there's anything else. I really appreciate your time, and it seems like our patrons really enjoyed this as well. A lot of good information. So
Great.
thanks again for hopping on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Have a good night.
Okay, bye-bye.